Question: why are so many people intolerant of the media? This afternoon, we're going to hear from the Ghana Journalists Association on this particular matter. I'll tell you what else we'll talk about. Should the death penalty be abolished? It's about time we address that question. Also, this conversation with the country director for Amnesty International will reveal how he is urging MPs to back proposals to repeal the law. Now, defiant majority in Parliament proceed with the business in the House in spite of the low attendance with a message to the opposing NDC who have been boycotting the House. Why don't we get started from Parliament, where the House has struggled to get MPs on the floor as majority boycott sitting for the third time. Parliamentary Affairs correspondent Kweku Asante joins us with the details. Right, Kweku, talk to us. Has sitting started? What's the attendance looking like in the House today?
So sitting has since adjourned. Parliament started sitting around 12, and there were not so many MPs on the floor. In fact, we know that the NDC minority MPs have boycotted sitting because of Gyakye Quayson. So they were not in the chamber at all. But at the time sitting started, the first deputy speaker, this was came in to meet. There's about 25 NPP MPs, and that was the number that they had to adjust and do some sort of work with. It was not so encouraging, but they had to go ahead nevertheless. And so sitting has now adjourned to tomorrow because the minority boycotted, but the government started able to do a few business before the House took an agenda.
Right. Okay. So what exactly are some of the items lined up for the attention of Parliament today?
Well, so in particular, the House has to do with the buffer stock company. They are owing some suppliers to the tune of about 270 million cedis the whole of last week. The suppliers, Digitech, as the buffer stock company limited, they had an assurance from the agri minister that the money was going to be paid. The money since has not been paid. The minority visited them. They raised issues on the floor and had the Speaker of Parliament director, the agri minister, brief MPs. And so the agri minister was on the floor today to brief MPs on the state of that debt. He says that government has paid 50% of that debt, and that it's expected that the money will hit the accounts of these suppliers by the end of tomorrow, midweek. That is the assurance that the agri minister is giving. So that was one particular key business that the House has to do with. There were also a number of questions that stood in the name of NDC MP and one in the name of an NDC MP. That question that stood in the name of the NDC MP was asked, but the ones having to do with the NDC MP could not be asked because the NDC MPs are boycotting the House. And because of that, the questions have now been deemed to have been forfeited. The answers will not be published. But the House could not deal with much weightier business. For instance, matters having to do with bills that are currently before the House. We've already spoken about the death penalty, something that has come up strongly on the floor of the House. But they could not deal with it today because the MPs are simply not around to be able to deal with that. So a few business on the cross have not been dealt with, but the House has had to take an adjournment to come in tomorrow.
This series of absences by the minority have been in solidarity with Gyakye Quayson, who returns to court once more today. Tell us, how come on previous occasions these boycotts caused the House to suspend sitting, but not today?
Well, yes. The last three times that it happened, Parliament adjourned almost immediately. They did not deal with almost any business at all. But this time around, the majority have been insistent that the government of Ghana and the Parliament of Ghana actually cannot wait for the minority. And that if they continue to boycott, the majority will try and bring their numbers on the floor to do business. Today, the numbers were not that encouraging because 25 is a pale shadow of the actual numbers on the majority side. But they were able to do some small business regardless. That meant that the House did not adjourn immediately. They were able to take a few business, lay a few papers here and there, take some questions before the House took an adjournment, unlike the previous situation when the House almost adjourned immediately when the House started because the minority were not there. But this sitting today was a little bit different because a few business were considered.
Kweku, thank you for that update. No doubt you'll keep on top of this issue for us. That's our parliamentary correspondent, Kweku Asante. Now, we've got Joseph Akable joining us now with updates on the case that is causing the boycott in Parliament. Gyakye Quayson returns to court today, and our very own Joseph Akable has been keeping an eye on proceedings. Joseph, how did today unfold as the fate of Gyakye Quayson is decided in court?
Business that was to be dealt with today had to do with a ruling that was to be delivered by the courts. We know that Mr. Quayson has been fighting in the last couple of weeks, raising concerns about the court's decision to hear his case on a day-to-day basis. He initially made a request at the High Court. The High Court said it was going to hold it on a day-to-day basis. He asked the court to review his decision. The court affirmed his decision again. Then he filed an appeal at the Court of Appeal. He again has filed a process at the Supreme Court that effectively wants the case at the High Court to be put on hold. And so he put these matters in front of the High Court and asked the High Court that, in view of the fact that there are pending processes at the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court, the case should be put on hold. Now, the Attorney General, Godfrey Dame, disagreed and had told the court that, as far as the laws of Ghana are concerned, unless a higher court gives a lower court an order to halt its proceedings, the lower court was not required to put its proceedings on hold simply because someone has gone to file a process at the higher court. And he made a point that if that were to be allowed, it would mean that all an accused person would have to do is, whenever there is a ruling at the court, he proceeds to file whatever process they want to file at the higher court, and no business will be done. And this argument found favor with the court presided over by Justice Mary Yanzu, and in her ruling today, she did indicate that, as far as she is concerned, there had been no evidence showing that there was an order from any court stopping her from proceeding with the case. And so she dismissed the request by Mr. Quayson's legal team to put the case on hold, and then proceeded to have the hearing take place with a witness of the state going into the witness box to be cross-examined.
Well, it would appear that there might be even more boycotts coming up if proceedings continue as they have. So, I mean, at this point, as the prosecution continues to lay out its case, how is it affecting what we heard to be Gyakye Quayson's position from the very beginning of this matter? How much of a dent is the prosecution's case making in their defense so far?
In fact, as far as Mr. Quayson's lawyers are concerned, they say that they believe that the case of the prosecution so far, this is just the first witness, they said it hasn't added anything to the charges against him. They hold a view that the prosecution is failing its quest to prove the case. Now, the first witness is Richard Techi Mensah. He's the individual who actually went to the police CID to file a criminal complaint against James Gyakye Quayson. He's the one who went there to say that, look, this individual had filed his nomination forms, and in doing the statutory declaration, he had claimed he did not owe allegiance to any other country aside from Ghana, but it turns out that that's not accurate, and so investigate him for various offenses. And so that's what gave rise to this particular process. Now, he was in the box today, and he was cross-examined by Chatu Chikata for a very brief period, but very interesting banter between them. The question Mr. Chikata sought to find out from him was the complaint that he had written at the police CID, whether he wrote it himself in English or someone wrote it and gave it to him to submit, or was it a case that he narrated in Twi and it was now translated and written in English for him? Mr. Mensah told the court that he wrote it himself and he wrote it in English. Mr. Chikata asked him whether he was certain he was the one who wrote it in English and signed. He said yes, he did so. And so he was given a copy of that particular criminal complaint and asked to look at the back page where his signature was, and he confirmed that yes, that was his signature and that was the statement he had given to the police. Then he was confronted with another document from the police investigative team's report. Now, in that investigative team report, he was asked to read some few lines from there, and the few sentences he read indicated that the police said the complainant narrated the incident in Twi, and this was written in English for him. And so, as far as Mr. Quayson's legal team are concerned, And this was inconsistent with what he had advanced earlier. When Mr. Mensah was confronted with this in court, his response was that he does not remember. It was a long time ago, and it may have been the case that, yes, he had narrated it in fear. So Mr. Quayson legal team say that this is someone who is clearly not credible as far as they are concerned. In terms of the other matter that has to do with whether in this petition to the police he attached any evidence in support of his claim that James Gyakye Quayson had committed any crime. He said, yes, he attached the documents to it, but Mr. Chikata was engaging him on the fact that they do not have records showing that his petition came along with any such documents, especially the statutory declaration that was signed by James Gyakye Quayson when he filed his nomination form. The point was also made about the fact that whether he was aware that the issues that were being raised had previously been canvassed at the Electoral Commission's offices prior to James Gyakye Quayson being cleared to contest the election. And Mr. Quayson managed to, or was given clearance by the EC to contest the polls. And he said he was not aware of that, but those are matters that he read of in the public domain. So it was at that point that the cross-examination ended. And so Mr. Quayson's team said that, look, it was a good day for them. They actually described it as a Black Tuesday. Abraham Maliba says it was an embarrassment of the case of the prosecution. But the Attorney General's office disagree. Deputy AG Alfred Tuyayabwa told us that as far as they are concerned, they are going ahead and presenting their case in a very credible manner.
Typically, the complainant, in any such case, tends to be a person who, well, until this case comes to light, is not usually a well-known person. We've seen that trend with many of such cases. Now, in this case, how much impact does this have on the prosecution's case if, indeed, the defense is able to bring the credibility of the complainant into question? Does it affect the material evidence in any way?
I mean, as far as the lawyers are concerned, then that is how come the bulk of the cross-examination today centered there. I mean, credibility of a witness is crucial in that if the witness is proven on the stand to be an untruthful person, then it brings into question the quality of the evidence that is submitted to the courts. And so that is why they are engaging them further on this. But we are very much at the very initial stages of this particular case, and the offenses on this particular matter border on issues of forgery, issues of making a false declaration, and false travel certificates, and among other things. So those are the offenses that are against him. And so these are matters that could be borne or proved through documentary evidence, because there was some statutory declarations that were done. Is there a passport? Is there a trail of that? And so all those are matters that will be canvassed. But mind you, the position of James Gyakye Quayson's team, as far as this matter started, has not been to the effect that he never said he did not owe allegiance to any country other than Ghana. Their argument has always been that at the time he made those declarations, he did not owe allegiance to any country other than Ghana because he had put in the application. And we know that the Supreme Court has disagreed with that particular position on the matter. And so we do not know how they would put that defense differently, but they would make it a case again. They've said that he pursued or filled those documents in the honest belief that at the time that was an understanding of the legal position, and it's observation that the Supreme Court has brought clarity on the matter. So those are matters that they will be canvassing in one way or the other before court, per what they have told us so far, Kojo.
Did Gyakye Quayson's team have anything to say about the Attorney General's argument that found favor with the judge regarding the motion they had filed in a higher court?
I mean, they make the point that, yes, they are disappointed, but they are going to the Court of Appeal actually tomorrow. And the first aspect of what the Court of Appeal will be confronted with is whether they should put the trial at the High Court on hold and deal with the issues surrounding whether the judge was right to allow for the case to be heard on a day-to-day basis. And so they make the point that, look, we are disappointed, but we got a good day nonetheless because of how the testimony of the witness went. But going forward, we have the option of putting the same arguments before the Court of Appeal. And this time around, it will be before 3 judges. And so maybe if they fail to convince 1 judge at the higher court, they may get 2 or maybe 3 of the judges at the Court of Appeal to agree with them, in which case it will mean that the decision of the 1 judge at the high court may be set aside. And so that is an aspect of this particular matter that they intend to pursue aggressively. And so tomorrow they'll be making those arguments at the Court of Appeal. Again, tomorrow there's the issue of the contempt case that is against Aketi Hammond, the Minister of State responsible for trades and industry. He, you recall, had made some comments about James Gyakye Quayson's case and likened it to that Damusakande case that has resulted in he being dragged to the court for contempt in terms of those comments that he made. And so that is also another matter that is supposed to be dealt with tomorrow at the court. So very busy day at the court. The trial will also continue at the High Court tomorrow. And so first, tomorrow morning, Court of Appeal at 9 a.m. Then they'll come over to the High Court at 12 for a resumption of the trial. Then there's the contempt aspect of the case against the Minister of State that has to be also dealt with at the High Court.
Thank you so much for that comprehensive update. Joseph Akable is our court correspondent, and you'll be hearing lots more from him as this and other cases continue to make their way through the justice system. Now, in the last few years, the multimedia group, which owns Joy News, Joy FM, Asempa FM, Love News, and others, has been at the receiving end of attacks, either from politicians, police, or even ordinary members of the public who are themselves beneficiaries of our work. Now, this barbaric act of attacking journalists has been rising in our country, with some even losing their lives as a result. Remember Lateef Idris, Emmanuel Ante, Ahmed Swale, may God rest his soul, and Kwesi Parker-Wilson. The list continues. And to make matters worse, those who attack us are the same people who, in most cases, have to investigate the attacks. And you know how that's going to go. This afternoon, the Ghana Journalists Association is taking up the matter and dealing with these cold cases. Their president, Albert Kwabena Jumfo, is holding a news conference at the GJA headquarters. I want us to chip in and hear his thoughts on the matter.
Thank you very much. The president of the GJA, my colleague, national executive members, and my colleague, media practitioners. I want to say good afternoon to each and every one of you, and to add my voice to the apology rendered by Becky. We are starting about 1 hour late, and we are sorry for keeping you waiting. We are also thankful that you've had patience to wait for us, and that is a belief that we are all concerned about the matters we are going to address this afternoon. And the matters are very straightforward. It's about attacks on media practitioners in recent times. We have observed quite a number of them, and we are worried about what is happening now, especially when we are gearing up for an election year which promises to be very keen. And so when you are experiencing such attacks, they give cause to worry. There are a number of them we are going to address this afternoon, and the president of the GJA will be leading us in that on that course. One coming from the upper East region, but involving a colleague who is based in the Upper West region. One coming from the Ashanti region, and one coming from Tema. So these three attacks alone, and from where they are coming, clearly indicate that it is across the country. We have some from the northern sector, some from the middle belt, and some from the southern sector. And it is something we need to speak against. You know, the 1992 Constitution has spelled out some beautiful provisions by which any aggrieved person can seek redress. So, for example, under the Constitution, if a media person or media organization publishes something that you are aggrieved about, you may want to exercise your right to rejoinder under Article 162 Clause 6 of the 1992 Constitution. A right to rejoinder is a shall provision. So when you have won, the media organization or the individual who published the article against you has no choice but to publish your side of the story. And it is basically for you to also tell your side of the story. Secondly, the Constitution has also made provisions for the National Media Commission to settle disputes. So if you are aggrieved by any means, you can file a complaint at the NMC, and the NMC will go into that matter and the issue will be resolved. Thirdly, the same Constitution also makes provision for individuals whose reputation is injured to seek legal means, and one of the popular of such means is defamation. So you, the aggrieved person, can sue for defamation, and you may also get your case addressed. And all these avenues are civil means of addressing our issues. There's nowhere in the Constitution that says if by chance I write anything unpalatable about you, you need to come slap me. Okay, and if we were to go that route, then the soldier who is holding the gun will rule all of us. But what rules us is the law. That is why we say we are under the dispensation of the rule of law. So we are very much concerned about these attacks, and the president of the GJ is going to tell us in detail what the nature of the attacks are, and some steps we as a professional organization we have taken, and what we plan to do in the future going forward. And I'm only playing the role of John the Baptist. I'm here to prepare the way for the president of the GJA. So the details of our message for us this afternoon lies in his mouth and not mine. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kofi Abua, the General Secretary of the Ghana Journalists Association, for giving us an insight into what the 1992 Constitution has for us as journalists and as citizens of Ghana, the provisions that we have and the routes that we need to take instead of anarchy, the rule of law. That's why we are living a democracy. And so that's the word out there. And very soon, the president will be addressing us on the issues going forward. Let me point out that today's press conference is being carried live on the Joy News channel. The Joy News channel is live with this press conference. Thank you very much, Joy News, for this. Let me go ahead and welcome to the podium the president of the Ghana Journalists Association, Mr. Albert Jumfo, to tell us what is happening on the media landscape so far as the attacks on journalists in Ghana is concerned. Mr. Albert Jumfo. A round of applause for him, please. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of our noble profession. Let me add my voice to that of my able General Secretary and Public Affairs Officer who doubles as the MC for today's press conference. That we sincerely apologize for the late start, and we hope and promise that this would happen again. Now let's move straight to why we are here this afternoon. You are welcome to this important press conference that is very dear to the GJ, because this borders on the survival and sanctity of our profession. And therefore, as practitioners, you must be equally worried. The immediate trigger to this press conference is the incessant attacks on journalists in the country in recent times. As you may all be aware, the attacks on journalists have become so rampant that the GJA cannot silent on them, as our colleagues continue to suffer such inhumane treatments. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, one of the cases that is fresh in the memory is the attack on the Upper West Regional Chairman of GJA, Swala Abdul Wahab. The circumstances under which an immigration officer, and a senior immigration officer for that matter, pointed a gun at him and threatened to shoot him on June 20th, 2023, without any provocation, certainly required urgent investigation and appropriate sanctions where necessary. Swala, who is also the Upper East Regional Correspondent of the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, was traveling from Wa to Boga on a public transport to attend a workshop on climate change. The vehicle stopped at the immigration checkpoint at Naro in the Nandoli Kalio district for routine check of Ghana card of all passengers. The passengers, including Swala, disembarked from the vehicle. He then requested to use a kettle, which in our local language called buta, belonging to the immigration officers to perform ablution in a makeshift roofing sheet structure believed to be a urinal. But the immigration officers declined his request, so he returned the kettle, that's the buta, and decided to go into the bush to urinate. On his way, one of the officers instructed him to cross to the other side of the road to urinate. Swala did not find any justification in risking his life to cross a highway just to urinate when it was safe to do so in the bush on the side of the road where he was. The immigration officer, out of anger, shouted, "I am asking you to cross the road to urinate, and you are challenging me." He then cocked his gun and threatened, "If you are a man, go and urinate." Swala, together with the other passengers, quickly moved away from the scene and further into the bush to urinate. When Swala returned, the immigration officer again threatened to blow off his head for challenging him. In the course of the event, another immigration officer, whose name tag is given as Enim Ajepong, who was wearing the rank of Assistant Superintendent of Immigration, ASI, and believed to be the senior-most officer among them, suddenly rushed over and threatened to arrest and lock up Swala. Subsequently, he rushed into his office and returned with a sidearm pistol, threatening to
Right, if you're still with us, we are bringing you live images from a press conference being held by the Ghana Journalists Association. They are addressing the growing menace of attacks on journalists, often by those whose work benefits the most. And so we are hearing a catalogue of events that have recently occurred in this light. He is sharing the details, the president of the GJA is sharing the details of these recent events and declaring the stance of the Ghana Journalists Association going forward on such attacks. As you are aware, Multimedia Group has had several of its staff victimized by those who attack journalists. We will be returning to this live press conference after a few messages from our partners. Don't go anywhere. Right, we must apologize. We seem to be having some technical difficulty. We have every intention of taking you back to that all-important press conference, which is addressing the very sensitive but important national issue of brutality against journalists. We've already lost lives. Journalists have already lost their lives as a result of this growing canker. And there are some to whom the damage is irreparable. We've got Latif Idris, who today still lives with the consequences of a single question he asked a police officer on duty. These things must stop, and the GJA is taking the ball by the horns. We'll bring you details. First, this afternoon, we explore the ethical, moral, and societal implications of the death penalty. It remains in Ghana's law books, in spite of it not having been used in the last 30 years or so. Some want to still keep it, others want it removed. This afternoon, Amnesty International has issued a statement urging MPs to support a repeal of this law. Across the world, some elite countries continue to have it, and in some cases actually execute offenders. So these are some of the details from the statement. Amnesty International Ghana is appealing to all members of Parliament to vote in favor of the motion on the Criminal and Other Offences Amendment Bill and the Armed Forces Amendment Bill, seeking to abolish the death penalty in Ghana. More details from that statement shortly, a statement issued by Amnesty International, who are seeking to lobby members of Parliament to look at repealing the death penalty from Ghana's law books. Indeed, it has been decades since anyone was executed. But the death penalty does remain in our books, and many have been sentenced to death in the interim. We just haven't seen the sentences being carried out. So we do know that across Africa, there are several countries that have the death penalty. There are 55 nations in the African Union that have the death penalty. It's been abolished in 26 of them. Now, in 15 countries, a long-term moratorium has been applied on executions. That would include Ghana. But there are 15 countries in Africa that retain capital punishment. So it is indeed a ripe debate topic. Around the world, there are thousands of people in China who have been executed. It's probably the country with the highest number of executions. Between 2017 and 2022, thousands of people have been executed in China. Iran would be second. In that same period, 2017 to 2022, more than 576 people have been executed. Saudi Arabia is not far behind. They have killed 196 people through their legal system. Egypt has had 24 death penalties executed between 2017 and 2022. Interestingly, the United States, that has had the death penalty as part of its culture in many of the states, including the southern states, between 2017 and 2022, have executed 18 people. Singapore is behind them with 11. Iraq has also seen more than 11 executions. Kuwait has had 7. In Somalia, more than 6 people have been executed in that 5-year period between 2017 and 2022. And South Sudan is at the bottom of that particular league. They have had over 5 executions in those 5 years under study. Now, the Chief Justice, Gertrude Araba Tokonu, was asked about her view on the matter during her vetting not so long ago. Let's recall what she had to say.
7 or 8 years in the Court of Appeal, came to the Supreme Court, and here I am. I've just moved on after working for some time.
So in other words, you have risen by merit, and there's nothing partisan in your career.
I would agree with that.
My lady, what is your view on death penalty? What's your view on that?
As a Justice of the Supreme Court, I'm mindful of the fact that when cases come to court, if a case came to court, it would be my duty to preside over it. But on a personal level, I do think that the death penalty is too final, and it's something that I would be grateful if the legislative body can begin to look at it.
Lord, if I shot your daughter, it would be final, wouldn't it?
It would be, but you see, in criminal law, we are always looking at the mens rea, not just the actus reus.
Is that not the essence of a trial? That you take all the necessary evidence and circumstances and everything you want to consideration versus the law and come to a conclusion that I shot your daughter, intended to kill her, and I did kill her, and therefore I'm guilty of murder. Would not that be how you would come to?
With all due respect, order 69. Mr. Chairman,
You're sharing about people saying we are quarreling. But I control the proceedings. If you want to bring anything to my things, you know what to do. You don't, no, not by speaking into the mic. Can we please hold on? My Lord, I was asking that if...
Kindly use another example, not my daughter.
You see, Mr. Chairman,
that's exactly the point.
You shot Madam X.
Lord, if I use Madam X, the emotional response will be different. So he who feels it knows it. So when we are arguing about death penalty being final and so on, it is when the shoe is on the other side. See that using your daughter as example gives a different feeling. That's all the point I want us to draw.
You've done a good job.
I'm very strong about that.
An eye for an eye.
All right, now let's explore this debate a bit further. Genevieve Partington is with Amnesty International. She joins us over the phone right now. Genevieve, thank you for your time. I mean, this is an age-old debate. The suggestion is that the death penalty, there's no coming back from it. There's no once a person is sentenced to death, there's no remedial justice beyond that. But here in Ghana, it hasn't been carried out in decades. Is it really a matter of urgency that this law be repealed?
Thank you for having me. And yes, it needs to be repealed. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. There is a bit of a break in the line, but we can hear you. Please proceed. Right. It seems we are having some technical difficulty in hearing Genevieve Partington, who is with Amnesty International. She's seeking to break down their reason for pursuing the repealing of from Ghana's law books. Genevieve, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Wonderful. Please continue.
So I was saying it's yes, it's urgent to repeal it because it, first of all, it doesn't serve as a deterrent to crime. And we are also, I mean, it's been in our statute books for a very long time. It came historically with, British common law, when, they used to, administer a lot of death penalty back then. And now, even the UK doesn't use it. So I think we need to relook at things and take it out. Yes, people are not being executed, but persons are still being sentenced to death. And why should it stay in the books if we are not using it? So I think it's time for it to make its grand exit that we are praying that Parliament will vote for very soon.
Is the fairly logical rationale for calling for the law to be repealed. What I haven't yet heard is the urgency. Where's the ticking clock? Why is it important for this to be done now?
Well, it's important for it to be done now, basically, because no president in power can guarantee that they will not execute anyone that is sentenced to death. That is one. Yes, we are moratorium, we are abolitionists in practice. However, it's a ticking time bomb. Anybody can come into power and decide, well, we are going to execute so and so. So why keep it in our books? And the fact that Parliament is debating on it now makes it urgent. The fact that it's been placed on the table, and the fact that there are so many key stakeholders, key decision makers that support it, faith-based organizations like the Catholic Bishops' Conference. You have Reverend Lawrence Tete, Archbishop Duncan Williams just issued a statement just a few days ago to support it. Ghana Armed Forces supports it. Even the Office of the President, Office of Chief Justice. So if all these people are pushing for it, then definitely there's a matter of urgency and we need to get it passed now.
In practical terms, what would happen to all of those who are currently on death row if this law is repealed and they can no longer be executed? What happens to their sentences?
So great, that's a very good question. So first, with the law, if this law is passed, what happens is that normally it only applies to those that get sentenced after the law is passed. However, the president has the death sentences to life imprisonment. So after it is passed and the president signs that the law can be passed, then the president himself has to commute those sentences. So it has to be retrospective. The law has to be retrospective for those who are currently serving time in jail. And they will serve life imprisonment. That is what has been suggested.
Now, although you've shared an impressive list of institutions that support the repealing of this law, there are still, especially the far right, Christian groups, who believe that Jesus Christ said an eye for an eye. In the justice system, is there no space for an eye for an eye? Since, the idea is that the punishment should be commensurate to the crime. For those who feel they have been deprived of loved ones by certain murderers and so forth, is there no space for an eye in those instances?
No, because first of all, an eye for an eye is from the Old Testament of the Bible. I don't know any extreme right Christians in Ghana per se, but what happens is most families actually do not believe an eye for an eye. They rather prefer life imprisonment for for most of these persons that commit murder. They're actually not interested in death penalty. Also, we have to understand most of the people within the condemned cells are persons who have actually not had, some of them have not had fair trials. Let's also understand that a lot of them come from very poor backgrounds. They do not understand most of the law, even how they got there. Yes, they killed someone, but were things explained to them properly? So we have to factor all those things in. And based on that, having, quite a number of unfair trials, and that is no fault of the judiciary system. It's just, unfortunately, that is how our system currently is. So based on that, it's very difficult to actually put people on death row because they haven't got a fair chance to defend themselves. Some people are also wrongly convicted. We have to think of there's a small percentage of people that are wrongly convicted. So what about those who are wrongly convicted? What if they are executed? Then what happens to them? So we have to think about those things. I think it comes from more of a human rights perspective that people have to look at these things than an emotional perspective. And, I kill because someone killed. And that is actually contradictory to what we believe in society. If we are telling people not to murder and the state is also going to murder, I think that's very contradictory to our beliefs. So that is why it is urgent. It's urgent because it's in Parliament now. So it needs to be voted, in favor of the motion to abolish.
Right. Now, you and your colleagues at Amnesty International have obviously had this debate over and over again. The questions I'm asking you are questions that you've answered on various fora in the past and continue to do so. So forgive me for playing devil's advocate. It's for the benefit of our audience. I want them to see how Amnesty International has arrived at the very solid stance that you are upholding and defending today. So forgive these questions, but I am very curious about this. You've talked about these institutions that are all for the abolition of this law, but there are those who might argue that these institutions calling for the abolition actually goes against the base nature of the average Ghanaian. It is the same average Ghanaian who, when people are caught stealing, would beat them up, put rubber tires around their necks and completely illegally burn them to death. It happens here in this country. So would it not be a suggestion that the people themselves, left to their own devices, would consider death to be an appropriate punishment for certain crimes?
Because if you look at it, those who are being punished and burned to death and lynched, unfortunately, are those that are committing the petty crimes and not those that commit murder. Those that commit murder are immediately, sent to jail, and then they get their time and trial. So far, I've not heard of any person that has committed a murder that has been lynched. It's mostly petty crimes. So I don't think that would be a great comparison.
Just to assist with the record, 2 people last week were lynched in the Asin area. 2 people who attempted to murder an elderly lady, cut her up with cutlasses. And as they were leaving the scene, allegedly, they were set upon by members of the community who burnt them to death in front of the police. This happened just last week. It was reported on Adum FM. So that's at least one example, isn't it?
Yes, it's one out of so many examples. It's just one. So we can't use one to validate why the death penalty needs to be abolished. So again, with Amnesty, we look at the countries that have abolished. Overall, it's about 112 countries that have abolished the death penalty. Our neighbors have abolished the death penalty. So it's something that we need to look at and also abolish. Even the International Criminal Court and the Rwanda courts do not use death penalty for terrorists and persons that commit genocide. They use other forms of punishment. So why would Ghana continue to use the death penalty? There are so many other examples. Currently, we have 176 prisoners on death row. I can see that you are playing the videos. Their conditions are extremely deplorable. Again, but we are all human. If we want the prison to serve as a place of not just punishment, it also has to be a place of reform. The prison place, both are first-time offenders. They committed the murder. Have we looked at their whether they are mentally challenged? Have we looked at even the background, as I said, of the persons being convicted of murder? And then even sometimes the classification of murder. Some have been there due to domestic violence cases and so on. So I think this is something that we need to look at critically I know the Office of the Chief Justice and Attorney General as well, they are looking at it so that there's a better classification of murder charges, and also to swiftly change this death penalty to life imprisonment. There are so many statistics out there. Ghana, we've done a public opinion poll, and apparently most Ghanaians actually do not want the death penalty. So it's contrary to what others are actually saying. So this is something that we really need to look at. And Parliament needs to see the urgency to pass this law. There's no more sitting on it. It's something that is urgent.
Genevieve, thank you, Genevieve. This has been delightful. We appreciate your time with us, and we'll certainly keep an eye on proceedings in Parliament as this particular bill is considered. Genevieve Partington represents Amnesty International. Right, we've been doing our own poll on Twitter. The simple question was asked: do you think the death penalty should be repealed? And just as Genevieve suggested, so far, out of 359 votes, 54% are saying yes, it should be repealed. 46% are saying no, it should not be repealed. We'll keep an eye on that. It's some 4 hours into that particular poll. And so far, the yeses, the ayes have it. Let's see if Parliament follows suit. All right, now residents in Kito in the Salaga South municipality of the Savannah region have condemned the deplorable conditions on the Kito-Salaga road. The residents say the road is the worst in the region, describing it as a death trap. According to them, plying the Kito-Salaga stretch demands a lot of caution because of its tortuous nature. Let's check this report out.
The Kito electoral area has 12 communities, a major food growing area in the Salaga South municipality. But over the years, neglect of the road has literally cut them from the rest of the world. Drivers must learn to be patient and with great care to navigate the road. For now, commercial vehicles have stopped plying the area. Therefore, to travel to Salaga or Pandai, one has to travel on a motorcycle or a tricycle. The residents say to travel with a sick person or a woman in labor, one would have to spend hours on the road, sometimes losing the patient. Assemblyman for the area, Liman Elijah, said they are currently cut off from the rest of the world. A situation, he said, is disturbing.
And looking at the road, this is a major road that supplies foodstuff to Salaga market. And when you look at it, for past months, cars cannot even go to Salaga market. It was only motorkins and other things. And anytime it rains, the motorkins cannot also go. And we only have one clinic on this route. And that clinic referred to Salaga Hospital. So referring women from here or clients from here to Salaga is also another problem. The motorkins cannot even go. So when you get a car, they will not go. So it's a problem for them to even travel. Even when it is in the night, the clients cannot go. So we are suffering. The people are suffering.
Another resident, Mbabai, lamented that the situation is unbearable.
This road is so terrible. You can ride and get to a place you cannot go again. So, if a motorbike can get stuck, imagine a vehicle. If the authorities believe we are humans, they should consider us and fix the road. Traders are losing. For us, if the road is not fixed, no vote.
Madam Mary said people continue to lose their lives on that road, especially pregnant women. This tricycle I have boarded, by the time I return, my sons will be running everywhere to either get me drugs to relieve me of pain or take me to the hospital. The roads are in terrible state. Every year, politicians come and deceive us, vote for us, we would fix your road. But nothing has been done. This bad road network has taken many of our colleagues to their early graves. Nana Kojo Pine Owusu, who had traveled from the Ashanti region to the area, could ask for only one thing: help to save lives.
So from Saraga to Gurubi Quarters, in fact, the road is very bad. So during the rainy season, if the car brings some goods from Gurubi Quarters to Saraga or from Saraga to Gurubi Quarters, in fact, it's not easy. At times, they got accident on the road. Please, we are begging to government to maintain the road from Gurubi Quarters to Saraga or Saraga to Gurubi Quarters.
For these people, they have resolved that until their road is fixed, no political party is allowed into the area to campaign for the 2024 general elections. For Joy News, Martina Bugri reported.
Now, the Ghana National Fire Service says at least 280 people were rescued from floods in the Kumasi metropolis in the month of June 2023. Most victims in flood-prone areas were trapped in their homes after heavy rain. Recent torrential rains flooded most areas of Kumasi, claiming almost 10 lives. Nana Boakye Yadom has been monitoring. Here's his report.
Each year, flooding causes more deaths than any hazard related to thunderstorms. It wreaks havoc on development infrastructure and increases human casualties. In the Ashanti region, Ohim, Sewua, Ebuakwa Asenemaso, Tafo Inshayaso, Hiawo Besianse and Sapase are among flood-prone communities. Residents experience heavy flooding anytime there is a downpour. The flood breaks down walls and inundates homes. Trapped residents call on the fire service to their rescue.
When it rains, you will regret, as we are doing now. When the place gets flooded, we run away from our homes.
It wasn't like that. But we don't know what is the cause of the water this time around. It will be flowing. Before you realize, it will come back to this particular area. And it will even get into this particular pool. In fact, it's a problem to us over here. We don't know what to do to this particular situation. We need your help. Since you've come, we know you are our mouthpiece. You should send this particular problem to the highest team.
According to the fire service, 280 victims of flood were rescued in June alone. Regional Communications Director DO3 Peter Ade says some victims are trapped in their homes and others from the outskirts.
This year alone, we've done about 280 rescues. I mean, we've rescued about 280 people from flood cases that happened in Tafo, Inshayaso, Besianse, Sepase, and many other places.
Streams are blocked with debris, reducing the rates that water flows, causing floods in communities. Peter Ade says the fire service remains on standby to rescue victims as the rains come down heavily.
If you are trapped in any flood situation, the best institution to call is fire service to come in to rescue you. I'm sure if you also monitor the airwaves, you realize that we are doing a lot of education on floods.
For Joy News, Nana Boakye Yadom, Kumasi.
Now, the Ghana Armed Forces and the police service are fighting back against the minority's claim that the government is contracting land guards to reclaim state lands. Now, the deputy ranking member of the Lands and Forestry Committee, Al-Hassan Suhini, told journalists at a press conference on Monday that the chief director at the Lands Ministry, Professor Patrick Agbesinyale, had revealed to the committee that the government, including the police and armed forces, have been engaging the services of land guards to retrieve and protect state lands. But the two security agencies have mounted a strong defense, describing the claims as untrue and baseless. First, let's listen to excerpts of the Armed Forces statement read by my colleague Kweku Asante.
Ghana Armed Forces cannot protect its own lands, but rather indulge in illegality by relying on the services of land guards, a prescribed activity. The Armed Forces deem it regrettable that such reports are in the news. They also take on Alassane Suhuyini, who made this allegation and says that at least he should have taken steps to verify this. They call that the media should ignore these false claims from him.
Right, I will be coming back with more details on that evolving story. But right now, though, it's time to stretch our limbs a little bit, get yourself a cup of tea, and come back right here for The Pulse. Stay with us. You're welcome back. Now, a presidential aspirant in the New Patriotic Party, Alan John Kwadwo Kyerematen, has indicated that he has what it takes to develop the country. According to him, he has exhibited these capabilities under the John Kufuor and Akufo-Addo administrations. He said the establishment of the president's special initiative, automobile assembly plants, and the One District, One Factory program were introduced and implemented by him. Mr. Kyerematen therefore implored NPP delegates from the Ho Central, Adaklu, and Agotime Jokwe constituencies to vote for him as the next presidential candidate of the NPP. Now, he said this when he addressed the delegates who converged in Ho during the second day of his cluster tour of the Volta region.
The presidential hopeful Alan John Kwadwo Kyerematen kicked off his cluster tour of the Volta region in Sugakope, where he met delegates from South, North, and Central Town constituencies. He shared with them his transformational agenda for both the New Patriotic Party and Ghana. The team proceeded to Aplau to meet delegates from Ketu South, Anglon, and Keta constituencies. Mr. Kyerematen entreated delegates to impose their confidence in him as he stands tall among the 10 candidates to win power for the NPP.
I'm the only one who can stand toe to toe in Volta region. True or false? True or false? You see, the people of the Volta region have always been sending a message to NPP, except that we are not hearing them. Volta region has been saying, it's not that we don't like NPP. We like NPP, but bring the right candidate. Volta has been saying this for a long time. If you bring Alan, Volta will now fall for NPP. Look, every serious person in NPP knows what I'm talking about. They know it. It's not that they don't know, they know it. All the people, the big men, the small men, everybody in NPP knows that if you take Alan, Volta region will vote for Alan. But it is in your hands. Don't let anybody deceive you.
He outlined his vision of amassing wealth for the NPP through job creation.
In 2005-2006, I have been talking about this.
Alan Kyerematen there continuing to stake his claim to the candidacy of the presidential race on behalf of the NPP. Now, he's loved by many for his role in Ghana's independence struggle, setting the country on an industrialization path and championing the Pan-African agenda. There are those who, however, see him as a dictator and question what exactly Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's legacy is. The debate is not exclusive to academics and other members of society. Two of his own children, Samia and Sekou Nkrumah, also disagree with each other on what their father exactly stood for and what his legacy must be. Check this out.
I have had the pleasure of seeing some of Osagyefo's artifacts that he used, items, his clothing. It's a beautiful experience when you enter the museum. Cameras aren't allowed in there for obvious reasons. You need to come here to experience it yourself. This was not planned. I stepped out and guess who I see here? I see Samia and Seku Nkrumah, children of Osajifo Dr. Kwame. I'm just so pleased to see them here. I see them on TV, I see them on social media, never had the chance to see them in person, and I get to do that today. Hello, good to see you.
Hello, Joy. Yes,
it's such a pleasure having you here. I have enjoyed every bit of this scenery, trust me. And I told them it's such a beautiful experience for me because I didn't grow up knowing Nkrumah. So I get to learn about him and I get to have at least the best first-hand interaction I can with who he was and what he stood for. But for you as his children, I can imagine what it feels like for you to be here today. Do you mind sharing with us?
Oh, absolutely. And we've been here many times, but this is one of the first times, let's say for me it's the second, to be in this redeveloped and restructured Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Park and Mausoleum. And I'm encouraged. I'm happy with what I see, because precisely what you said is the reason why we need a good place for the young generation to come and be reintroduced to Osajifo Kwame Nkrumah, what he stood for, what he tried to do for Ghana and Africa and Africans all over the world. So this is a place of learning, and I think that's the whole purpose. And the reason why I am happy and encouraged, it's because I know that people who come here would be inspired. I am inspired. Of course, there's the personal side and the political, but I'm inspired just coming here, paying homage to not just to the man, but to what he stood for. Because he was a mortal man, obviously, but he also stood for a vision to redeem Africa and Africans. And I think that's something we need to keep on remembering.
All right. What about you, Seku?
Well, I mean, going back to your introduction, I mean, you said it, you're too young to know Nkrumah. And when Nkrumah was overthrown, I was only 2 years old. I think Samuel was 5, the man was 6. So let me speak for myself. I didn't know anything about Nkrumah. So I got to know Nkrumah from reading books, not as a kid, but when I grew up a bit, especially when we returned to Ghana. So I was like 11, 12. So that's really was my getting to know Nkrumah, reading the books. But interesting for me, I started reading books that were critical of Nkrumah before I started reading books by Nkrumah and books that promoted Nkrumah. So I always think that I'm very objective in that. But I think what Samuel was saying earlier, it's important to have places like that that really not only promotes Nkrumah, but gives people the idea of where he's coming from, what his vision was. So the decolonization, the Pan-African Union, and of course the socialist path. It's something that I struggled with for a long time, because in today's world, socialism is not so attractive. But look, we have to look at the totality of Nkrumah, and then we can decide what to do moving forward. So he said he was a Marxist intellectual. We can't ignore these things about Nkrumah. That's what he represented. But again, also, you know, the mausoleum was built in 1992. Nkrumah was first buried, I mean, he was buried in Guinea, then buried in Nkrofo, his hometown, during Achampon's time. And then during the Rawlings time, the PNDC, not NDC, right. So sometimes we also have to give credit to the PNDC then, even if you don't like Rawlings or whatever, but it was his time that he built this place. And then, of course, as I agree with Semi, that if the present government, MPP, led by Nana Akufo-Addo, so if they've built on what someone else has done, I think it's a good thing. But for me personally, there was just one aspect that I kind of confused me a bit, and that was I wouldn't know the reason the MPP are thinking of or thought of building up, renovating this place and making it better than it was. I hear it was a bit neglected, right? But the point here is that if you're talking about Nkrumah, you know, Professor Mills declared the 21st as the Founders' Day, singular. So the idea was that, and that I think many people think, I thought I'm very objective, but in this one I think Nkrumah is the founder. He led Ghana to independence. He was Ghana's first president. So that again comes to the 1st July, removed as a public holiday. I mean, we had a Ghanaian as head of state, not the Queen. So you see, that is very significant. And then again, when you create 4th August as founders, then plural, then that also confuses people. Because, of course, Nkrumah is not the only one who contributed to independence. And in fact, people were there before him. In fact, they called him from the UK. But they identify with his capacity and his hard work. And in fact, he overtook them simply because of their hard work. But the point is that, so when you do these things, for me, it's like you're confusing, because the history is one.
So if I get you right, and I'm sure you're not the only one, because quite a lot of people were like, okay, because we thought that the agenda was not to focus so much on Nkrumah, make it more generalistic, as this government will make us believe, and then all of a sudden, all this beautiful edifice for Nkrumah, what exactly are you communicating? Is that what it is?
Yes, I think it's more or less, yeah.
But I think what I would like to see and what I'm happy about is that Ghanaians can reach consensus on what is good for us, because that's the way forward. We might have different political orientations, different ideologies. You have NDC, NPP, other smaller parties. But the fact of the matter is, for us to progress, we have to agree on certain things. I'm happy today we agree that Nkrumah, what he stood for, what he championed, that Africans must unite, work together, is something we all agree on. So for me, that is progress. One of the things that really made me proud and happy to be a Ghanaian is that I'm thinking, okay, Ghanaians are united in paying their respects to Kwame Nkrumah and what he did for us and what he can still do for us, because his ideas are for the future. Are our states united? If we were united, we would have been borrowing as a bloc at very favorable rates, interest rates. We would have been building our industries together instead of separately, unable to pay our debts back. So what he championed is for the future. It's for you, for your generation. So I'm happy. Everybody has played a part in honoring Nkrumah. And this is the culmination of it, a redesigned, redeveloped, more beautiful park and mausoleum, and even a library, which is something we had suggested that we need a Kwame Nkrumah presidential library, because Kwame Nkrumah was not just any leader, he was an international statesman. And let us learn and recover from him, his ideas, how he went about doing things, how he came to have friends all over the world, friends of Africa and Ghana. So this place for me symbolizes unity, in a way, unity of Ghana, unity of Africa and Africa.
So here's what I told my... all right, okay.
It's okay, but we have to go back to this bit that you don't confuse us with the past.
All right.
That's, if it's true what Sam is saying, is honoring Nkrumah and all that and his vision, but for us to understand really his vision, then we have to understand who Kwame Nkrumah was and what he represented. So when you try to confuse us with the past or distort the past, I think that's not good enough. So sometimes, even if people don't like it, but we have to accept that Nkrumah is the founder. We have to accept that there's significance in 1st of July, because I was telling you earlier why. Yeah. Yes, so these things, when you try to distort them and then bring in the 4th August to confuse people further, then although I agree you are honoring Nkrumah and so on, but at the same time, you're also taking a bit out and confusing people. And young people have to know the truth or what stood. We don't have to all agree on it, but we can't agree, we can have differences, but we cannot distort the past. That's why it's significant to understand that point.
Right. Okay. So here's what I told my tour guide when I went in there, and I've seen that video when the Queen died. It kept playing on the BBC, the video of your father dancing with the Queen, and how he's the only black man to have done that. And then I see that his Cadillac was gifted him by the president, former president of the U.S. And then I'm like, okay, so the impression I was given as a young child was this Pan-Africanist hated whites, right? So I'm beginning to reconcile what I'm seeing and what I heard, and I'm like, okay, what I think is that he was more of an assertive person, and he won't hate you, but whether you were his friend or not, he would tell it to your face that he didn't like your neo-colonialism agenda. But when it came to, for example, dancing with the Queen, he will dance with the Queen. Someone will say, why will you dance with someone who colonized you? But then again, I see that he wasn't a hater.
Thank you.
Let me ask you, Sekou, because you spoke about the fact that you read the books critical of him before you read the books written by him. What impression do you have of your dad? Honest impression.
Yeah, no problem. But first of all, it's not hate, but you have to confront what is wrong.
Yeah, right.
Yes. So the issue is not, he doesn't hate white, but he hates what they do.
Right.
If it's the Western world or whatever, the colonialist.
All whites It's the system, you know, the system that is exploiting us. But the ordinary white people, workers going about their business, what have they done? You know, they are oppressed themselves.
But the Queen represents that colonialism. She's the head.
Yes.
Yes.
No, but as a statesman, you need to do diplomacy.
Yes, that's a different thing.
People
Right.
People go to war. The same people who go to war with each other sit around the table and make peace.
But you have to stand for what is right and what is wrong. Yes, it doesn't mean you are quarreling with people, but you have to define that these
in
people
negotiations, everyone speaks their mind, and then people find common ground. So dancing with the Queen doesn't mean I cannot speak against neocolonialism or oppression or exploitation.
And that's exactly what he did.
And I'm happy you seem to have come to that conclusion too, you see. So when people say Kwame Nkrumah was too radical, or there's nothing wrong with radical, by the way, I think it's fresh and beautiful, but not pragmatic. I respond that Kwame Nkrumah was very pragmatic, you know, because he was a leader of a country which needed to develop. And he said, we neither face east nor west, we face forward, meaning he's ready to do business with whoever can help us achieve our aim of raising the standard of the living of the people. You know, so
true, but at some point he also broke away from the Commonwealth. So you see, people don't stand in one place; they develop all the time, and their ideas and vision. It might not change completely, depart completely from the vision, but you have to readjust at moments. So sometimes he might have been diplomatic, maybe towards the end, and that comes to your question. Nkrumah at some point introduced the one-party state, which is seen as. I mean, I grew up in an era where, got introduced to politics, that democracy was the key for me. And that's why I championed return of Ghana to the multi-party democracy and so on. But I'm saying, talking about Nkrumah, that is someone else. But if you're talking about Nkrumah, towards the end, his ideas changed and he shifted. I mean, he's always been a Marxist socialist, but he then turned Ghana into a one-party state. Some people are not comfortable with that. And I, at some point, criticized that. But the coup, which kind of, the statue was brought down, Nkrumah's, I mean, everybody was running down Nkrumah, those when they succeeded in the coup. But the point is that, yes, he did close the door on opposition. So I, in the past, I said, in a sense, if you look at it, you can justify the coup only from that point of view. But if you're looking at the bigger picture, then we have to understand he introduced the one-party state because of that socialist path that. So you had to
put it in context. But we have to put in, when we talk about the one-party state, we have to put it in context. It's not because of his socialist ideas. No, the fact of the matter is Kwame Nkrumah had invited even the opposition and was in Parliament. They were debating. He had invited some of them to join, but it was born out of it was born out of this particular situation where one-party states also were in vogue in many other countries. It's just we like to criticize Nkrumah about it, but let's look at the other African countries. It was the thing, the done thing after independence, when development, speedy, rapid development, was a priority above all else. And the way he introduced it through Parliament, through debate, he was trying to bring the best minds in the country to work together for a common goal.
Agree with him. And you see, introduce it. No, I'm sorry to cut you.
Democracy. The way we practice multi-party democracy today has to be refined because it's at loggerheads with our indigenous knowledge systems of how we practice democracy, which is reaching consensus. We discuss and we debate until we reach common ground. So multi-party politics today is the winner takes all. I win, you are nothing, you are vanquished. And I'm trying to tell you that
the one party is dictatorship. You can't say it's not dictatorship.
Every system, including multi-party democracy, has some undemocratic elements in it. We can talk till tomorrow, but let us look at its totality. Let's not just say Kwame Nkrumah one-party state without taking it out of context.
No, I'm not taking it out of context because I'm saying it's the socialist part.
Socialism,
it's dictatorship, but that's what it chose to be. So let's know Nkrumah for what he was. Let's not create an Nkrumah that I want him to be.
So those are your impressions of him based on what you read,
based on reality. Did we not have a one-party state under Nkrumah?
No, I'm saying that because you were saying that you got to know him through writing because you were only two when he was overthrown.
Nkrumah introduced the one-party state. Right. Nkrumah became life president. These are facts. It's not what you read. And I'm saying that is dictatorial, but I'm saying it's because of his ideas of that socialist path for our development, not only for Ghana, but Africa.
So he chose it because for him it was a path to development.
Yes, he was a Marxist intellectual, and he chose the socialist path. We can't redefine Nkrumah as that's what I'm saying, but so it was dictatorial. But it doesn't mean that it's wrong, because that was his philosophy, and people have their philosophy. As today we have a multi-party system, that's the Western, inherited from the Western system. Nkrumah was against that. He didn't believe. He developed a point where he realized socialism is the path. So what I'm saying, for us to understand his greatness,
that's why everything was pushed through Parliament
not
today.
Western democracy.
No,
that's
but
a
even
kind of democracy.
every legislation, everything he promoted was done through Parliament. Right. This is a man who won three with his party.
So you
three
disagree
elections.
with the word dictatorial?
Strongly, because it's the manner in which he introduced most of his policies. Oh, everything actually was pushed through Parliament. So he used constitutional means, and we can check the records. So are we saying that today, when any government of the day pushes through things which the opposition vehemently opposes, that they are
no opposition then?
But
so
there was an opposition. There were
but
different parties,
they had no room to operate.
There was a referendum. There were everything was pushed.
I don't agree with you, but I guess people differ, even siblings.
But, yes.
But I actually love this, because we are engaging in very honest, beautiful discussions, all because of one man. And I dare say that I see that strong-willed impression that I have of who he is in the two of you, and that's why it's beautiful to see that though you're siblings, you're putting your points out across beautifully and hearing each other. But
I'm being bullied a bit.
No, bully. No, but that's what we do most of the time.
I can imagine what your home looked like when you were young.
Yes, exactly. No, but we love each other and we love Ghana, and we just, really, most of us, we want to see progress. We want to see.
So that brings me to my next point. Beyond the mausoleum, right, how do we cement what Dr. Kwame Nkrumah stood for? Because he just said that he made some of these statements, and the quotes I see on the wall there many years ago, but I can resonate with them so beautifully. There was one I saw that I said I was going to borrow from my conversations on Galamsey, the issue of the commonness of resources and how it must not be used for the selfish gain of others. And then the one I see about the fact that, look, we've moved beyond this point. It doesn't mean that we have it. We will face challenges, but we have the courage. Look, it gives me such confidence. You have no idea. When I read that, I was like, wow, this man, he definitely had something, right? Which was the ability to see beyond even his generation and probably mine. So I
think fantastic.
Yeah. So how do we cement his legacy beyond this, right? How do we take it out to the rest of the world?
As you like. I'm always urging. Okay, let him go first.
So, yes, so the truth is that no, I don't believe it. Women first. But in this case, I want, the fact of the matter, we've embraced a multi-party system of democracy. But we all know where it's going now, at least talking about Ghana now. It's NDC, MPP, we've changed NDC, MPP, and we are not really making much progress, right? So my point is that because that's the Western concept that we've embraced and we've imposed on our system. I think if you're talking about Nkrumah's legacy, then the thinking should be moving away from that Western concepts and the new colonialism. We should break away from that, those colonial chains. So he, as I said, chose that socialist path. I don't know today what we can choose, but it's obviously something different from what we have now. But I'm saying that with all honesty. But the truth is that I believe the way the world is now, we're going to be stuck with the multi-party system for a while. And I don't think any of us wants a coup d'etat or change of government through violent revolutionary ways. But we need to address this problem. We can't go on like this. I mean, look, I just came a few weeks and, the living conditions are just too hard for the average Ghanaian. So it doesn't make sense. What has multi-party served us since 19... Well, but we are talking about Ghana now and the legacy of Nkrumah. For Ghana, and then of course we can talk about Africa. But it's not, as you rightly say, then it's not really far in other African countries. We're still in the same. So that's what gives the opportunity. And the former American president who says Africa is excuse me to say, and then when you look around, then you realize that, he's wrong, but the idea, and why are we in this as...
So do you agree with analysts who say that we must begin to define what democracy means for us as a people and how to make it, within the African context, to look at what democracy is for us. Is that what I get?
What I'm saying is the past should definitely be different. This is a Western concept of democracy.
Yeah, so that means that we must define what democracy is for us.
But are we capable of doing that? That's the point. We're struggling with that.
We have very intelligent people. We have intellectuals. Yes, why not?
But the consensus thing, that's why.
But we need consensus.
No, consensus will not get us anywhere. You have a leadership that's determined that this is the path I want to go there and take my people with you. Yes, but of course the people have to be inspired by that.
We can review our constitution to allow for to tweak the winner takes all. We can introduce proportional representation. There are many ways of being more inclusive. So we can do that. We have the men and women who have the ability, intellectual ability to do that. So yes, we must change our constitution to suit our context and conditions, which I believe requires consensus. But your question, very important. We need to recover Nkrumah's ideas. So we need to study him. We need to read him. We need to debate him. You don't have to agree with him. You don't have to agree at all. We will never agree on anything. But studying, examining, assessing his thoughts, we must. Because this is an exceptional leader by all accounts, and someone who came in with a great Pan-African spirit and thoughts to liberate and unite. So we need to study him, because when we do that, then we will know what we can recover, what we can adapt, and what we can leave. You see,
because liberate, unite, and socialist path. You see, you want to remove that one from Nkrumah's legacy. You can't.
Nobody. I love socialism, but but I cannot stay in my corner. I have to talk to capitalists. I have to talk to moderates. We have to talk to, because
and I talk to them and you end up in this situation. You're embracing their philosophy and their ideology, and
you're almost not moving anywhere.
Continue exploiting you.
Now the winner takes all removes consensus from the table. So we are not practicing consensus building. The winner takes all is not working for us. So this is one of the things that needs to change.
The multi-party system is not working for us either. The Western democracy is not working in Africa. So
what do you suggest, right?
Are you talking about the legacy of Nkrumah? No, I'm saying she said it right. Liberation, unity, but she deliberately missed the socialist path. Because today we are
we don't miss it. I love socialism.
For Parliament, right?
So you're going back to Parliament?
I hope so. By God's grace, I will try. 2024 as an independent candidate. An independent means for the whole of Ghana, for everybody.
You're leaving your party?
I am not really in the party, because I've seen that the smaller parties are not truly independent. So there is no need to maintain that facade.
So there are the links of the smaller parties to the two main parties, so which feeds into the dual political structure.
You know better than me.
But you are the authority, so I can quote you as saying it.
But also, we need to go beyond that, because if we are saying we need to agree, have common ground, then we need to be a bit less dogmatic about party politics. Right. We need to be less partisan. So one way of doing that is to start thinking of some independent-minded people who can bring everyone together, not divide. We definitely need to be less partisan. But I want to go back to your very important question. You see, if you study Nkrumah, you will see things that need to be done today we haven't done. One of them is working with other African countries. Today we have the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. That is really something he put forward in Addis Ababa in 1963. If you read all the tenets, that's something that's Nkrumah's vision. Today we are sitting and discussing it and making countries ratify it. So this is the link. Nkrumah, the past and the future. Another thing is industrialization and manufacturing. Don't we all agree that we must go into manufacturing, add value? We are doing it. Another thing is education. Free education. It's state or private now doesn't matter. Even under Nkrumah, there was private entrepreneurs, and they were private because we had just come out of colonialism.
You see,
we had just come out of the.
We can't pretend to follow Nkrumah when we are following the West.
But do you think if Nkrumah was alive today, where he I'm just it's a hypothetical. Yeah, would he have moved on from the socialist path?
He would have redefined the socialist path for today, but he would never have been a non-socialist. He would have still been a socialist.
We've never had pure capitalism or pure socialism.
And that's why we're in a mess.
You see,
then you don't understand the legacy.
What is free SHS? That's a socialist-oriented policy. What is free healthcare? That's a socialist-oriented. So let us free our minds and not
doing it properly. That's why
we have never. Yeah, that's another debate. But we've never had pure this or pure that. Yeah. Can we move beyond even the isms and start thinking about what is good for our country?
Then that's why we're in this mess. That's my point. We've embraced Western philosophies, and then yet we are saying that Nkrumah was our greatest visionary. I think there's a conflict there.
All right, but we all conclude that Nkrumah must be celebrated, and we are happy about the mausoleum and the monument here. Look, guys, I could go on. You know, this is intellectually stimulating. I mean, when you hear two children of the Osajifo himself have a very, spirited conversation, and where they're firmly on their paths, you understand why it's important for us to have conversations like this as a people. But it's been an exciting moment for me here today at the Kwame Nkrumah Park and Mausoleum. I'm going to end it here and have some fun, but I'll stay in touch with the two of you, obviously, because you, Samia, still want to go to Parliament. We must have conversations, but that'll be it here on the Joy News channel. Continue the conversations, though. Continue the debates in your homes. Thanks for watching.
Wow, mind officially blown. Can you imagine two offsprings of an iconic historic figure having such a wonderful debate right there before our very eyes? Can hardly believe it. You could see my colleague Bernice like a kid in a candy shop. But one thing is for sure, it's obvious that conviction is genetically passed on, isn't it? Thank you so much for joining us for yet another edition of The Pulse. We're back with more tomorrow. Don't miss tomorrow's edition. But until then, you can find all the biggest stories on myjoyonline.com. Coming up next is LTS. My name is Koji Yankson. It's been a pleasure. Have a wonderful evening.